Chapter 70. The sun slowly rose over Sycamore Downs several hours later. D3 wanted to know more from Sully, more information than the generic foreboding that Mr. Blue was dying. The retired Commodore, however, would have none of it, and any chance D3 had to ask him was met with a change of subject, or his blatantly ignoring the question. Exasperated and confused, D3 decided she'd take a walk by herself, perhaps find some hot chocolate. This strange seaside town, which was so very quiet during the night, actually seemed to fall deeper into sleep in the daytime. It appeared there was no one around. There were not any sounds of seagulls, nor of children, not even the sound of the sea itself. Yet, being a quiet seaside town, D3 expected a fantastic beach, and Sycamore Downs certainly had one of those. It stretched all along the village's eastern border, vanishing into glitter in the far distance. Miles of pure white sand punctuated the megalithic rocks. D3 took in the salty air and hugged her used sweater close to her. She noted that this place was beautiful yet cold and empty. She was not lost on the irony that most of her ex-boyfriends could be described similarly. She stood and peered around, noting a tiny shack a little way down the beach. To the north was the first wall of the town's harbor and the lifeboat station. Absently, she began to stroll down the idyllic beach, getting sand in her shoes and tossing the odd rock out into the ocean. D3 had been off-planet most of her life, meaning that a trip to Earth was a rarity. So even though she didn't know Earth very well, especially Earth of the year 2017, D3 had still been trained in her scientific studies to note even the smallest details of her environment. Her job on Mercury, after all, was to terraform, to make the land habitable for humans. After minutes and minutes of walking, she finally realized something was missing. D3 looked out to the ocean. It was still. It was calm as glass. She stood motionless for a long time, watching, waiting. Yet, to her astonishment, there was no tide coming in, no tide going out. The entire ocean was simply holding itself in place. D3 ran up the beach to a large rock and scrambled to the top, shielding her eyes from the bright sun. Again, she was dismayed. Out further in the sea, there was absolutely no waves crashing. None whatsoever, still as glass. It was as if some higher being had pressed a pause on the entire ocean. Despite the woolen sweater, D3 felt chills at the base of her spine. No, she wasn't cold. She was detecting something wrong. Something was very wrong with this.
Donkeys! Donkeys!
Sully grumbled to himself.
Mr. Blue and his bloody obsession with flipping donkeys.
The retired Commodore cursed in a whisper as he kicked some rocks out of the way and continued down the street. Sully was a naval man from the way back, fought in a couple of wars, and found himself traveling in time as his retirement gift, which was fantastic up to this point. So what does Mr. Time Lord Sir ask him to do? Go fetch him an ass. Oh, of course.
No fishing village would be complete without a donkey ride.
Sully did his best dainty, unmanly impression of Mr. Blue. Not that Sully was animal shy, he wasn't. However, he hated the bigger animals. Cats and dogs were great, but horses, asses, donkeys? No, no thank you. Let the kiddies ride atop a big fat ass in the circle at the fair. Sully couldn't stand the smell of the beasts.
Dogs bollocks!
The retired Commodore stared in the distance to where the animals were kept, not too far from the fairgrounds, which had recently been set up. It took several minutes for Sully to traverse the pavement at the sandy beach area, just outside the immediate town, where the tiny shack held 4 donkeys by rope. After his unwanted stroll, Sully was disappointed to see the hack-eyed sign which read, "Back in 5 minutes." Sully rolled his eyes. The donkeys were unusual, staring at him at first. Then they began to whimper and whine. Not particularly liking larger animals, the retired Commodore was taken aback by their immediate affection. They were just being friendly. But no, he realized. They were being much more friendly than any horse or donkey he'd ever seen before. Perhaps they were scared. Then he looked down and saw their ribs. Poor buggers. They hadn't eaten a decent meal in a week. These donkeys hadn't seen a human for a very, very long time. The animals seemed distressed when he went to leave.
No worries, mate. I'll get you some chum.
Sully decided to go down and find them some carrots and apples and some water. Absently, he looked down and felt like a doddering old fool. What he saw was subtle, yet extremely disturbing in its own ways. There were no human footprints in the sand of any kind, except his. How long had these poor animals been alone? What the hell was going on here? Further down the harbor, Mr. Blue was admiring the lifeboat station. It was a large, warehouse-like building at the edge of the sand. The side facing the sea had huge doors which opened to reveal a gigantic cement slope that led directly into an eerie, placid ocean. The lifeboat was in a place at the top of a slipway, the concrete ramp sitting in its cradle. The Time Lord in the cobalt suit adjusted his azure tie and sniffed the air. This was definitely Earth. Definitely sometime around 2016 or 2017. Yet, he could detect no trace of the ozone scent, which produced that so-called Wi-Fi or wireless technology, which he found strange because most humans at least had a wireless mobile phone, if not a laptop PC or some other device. Even vehicles at this time had some form of adapted wireless technology. Mr. Blue shook his head. He opted to enter the gift shop, which was open to the public. The Time Lord was greeted with postcards, candies, soda pops, bumper stickers, tourist knickknacks, and trinkets. There was an information booth. There was a cash register. There was a collection box for the lifeboat station charity. Yet, there was no people. Not a single tourist, nor a member of staff to be found anywhere. Mr. Blue opened a refrigeration case and randomly grabbed a ginger beer, opening it up and inhaling the scent deeply. He took not a sip, but threw it in the wastebasket. He then placed a $5 note on the counter and went to go get a map from the information station. The Time Lord tuned to his advanced senses and heard, nor saw, nor felt anything at all. No other presence in the lobby. No presence at all, except himself. Yet, when he returned to the counter a moment later, he saw the exact change for the soda and the map waiting for him. Mr. Blue had no idea what was happening in Sycamore Downs, and this made the old Time Lord in the cobalt suit smile.